Hello, this is Professor Norman, and this is our second video section on the six-step diagnostic process. We already talked about the first two steps, which was number one, verify a customer's complaint. Very, very important, probably the most important step. Once you have verified the customer's complaint, you have duplicated whatever the customer has said. Then you move on to the second step, which was determine related symptoms. Now this is going to change for whatever you're diagnosing. So again, a fuel problem, electrical problem, an automatic transmission problem, or maybe an air conditioning problem. So if this was let's say a customer's complaint of it not blowing cold air, you could turn the AC on and you could put your hand under the dash and say, hey, it's definitely not blowing cold air. It's warm air coming out. That's a very easy thing to verify. If it is blowing cold air, if you put your hand in it is blowing cold air, then again, that's a little bit harder process to try to figure out if there's really a problem or not. And so again, every single symptom or complaint, we'll say, is going to be different as far as what you have to do to verify it. If you're having an air conditioning problem, maybe you're going to do an AC performance test. While you're doing that test to verify the customer's complaint, that and the second step, which is determine related symptoms, kind of goes hand on hand as far as it being, you're kind of doing those simultaneously a lot of times. Typically, you're gonna pop the hood, you're gonna look down and see if the compressor's engaged, you're gonna feel the AC lines. You're gonna turn the blower motor on. You're gonna operate the controls inside, make sure they're functioning properly. So all that again is part of determine the related symptoms. It could be as simple as you're going in and you're looking at TSBs. It could be that you hook up a scan tool and maybe everything is working fine. You can't verify the complaint. You have that half an hour window. So maybe you want to hook up a scan tool and see if there's any fault codes in the system, look over the sensors, make sure that everything is reading okay. Again, that's all part of determine the related symptoms. And so let's say, and again, right now we have two scenarios. Either you have verified a problem or you have not verified a problem. So let's say that we have verified the problem because that makes diagnosis a lot more interesting. So customer's complaint is it's not blowing cold air. And so you turn on the AC system, the car's in the shop, and you reach in and you feel the center AC duct, and you could definitely obviously tell it's not blowing cold air. You could ask 20 guys coming by and they would all say, yep, not blowing cold air. It's just blowing normal shop air. So then you're going into the next step of determining related symptoms. So under that particular scenario, you'd be maybe hooking up AC gauges, checking pressures, obviously looking down at the clutch, making sure that the clutch is on, checking fault codes, checking TSBs, just looking at what type of system, AC system it is, making sure that you're able to identify the pieces, making sure that you have good visual inspection, checking the belt of the compressor. There's a big long list of things that you would do as far as, again, visual inspection is what some people will call that. So then let's say, for example, under this particular scenario, that not blowing cold air, you verified it, you pop the hood and you look down and the clutch isn't on. Well, at that point in time, I mean, you found a symptom, right? It's not on. You go in there and you check to make sure that you turn the AC on, right? Sometimes those the cars are kind of hard to figure out if the AC is on or not. My 2003 Yukon has an AC off button, and for the first month I drove it, I thought that was the AC on button. And so, because Chrysler doesn't have an AC off button, they have AC on buttons. And so I remember pressing that and thinking, man, this AC is not blowing very, very cold. And I had the AC off the whole time. So it was user error. And so that happens a lot of times on newer vehicles, especially you got these big computer screens that are all touch screen, and it's very easy to be confused when you first get into a car as far as being able to proper operate it. So obviously you want to make sure that the owner's not causing the problem. And so obviously you want to make sure that the AC is on and the clutch isn't on. So at that point in time, the next step of this process, and I'm going to turn on my screen share just so you guys can see this. So the third step of the process is analyze the system, and this is a extremely important step. Once you have identified a problem and you are starting to narrow down the problem, sometimes people will say diagnosis is nothing more than process of process of elimination, which is correct. And so what analyzing the system means is really you understand how the system operates, and that is really, really important. As an example, let's say that my neighbor who has a Tesla, I see the Tesla go up and down the street on occasion, and let's say that he knocks on my door and say, hey, my Tesla doesn't start. Can you come over and look at it? I know that you're an automotive professor. I may go over there and look at it because I want to check out his Tesla. I'd probably embarrass myself because I would pop the hood and look under there and there's nothing there. And so he wants me to try to help him out on figuring out why the thing won't move. Well, I don't know anything at all about a Tesla. I haven't looked at one very in depth, except to see it go drive by. I don't understand how it operates. Me, being in the automotive industry for 30 years, I'd probably not be able to help him very well at all under diagnosing why it won't move, And so again, so the key is that we say this a lot of times, is that if you understand how something operates, then it makes diagnosis much, much easier. And that's the key. And so when we teach an air conditioning class, or we teach an electrical class, or we teach an automatic transmission class, a lot of that is making sure the students understand how those components operate and how those systems, either an automatic transmission system or maybe a starting system or something, operates. Because once you understand how it operates, then it makes it much, much easier to diagnose. If I don't understand how it operates, then I am guessing, I am not diagnosing. And so analyzing the system may be something as simple as popping the hood and looking at the compressor. Hey, what type of compressor is it? Is it a piston compressor or is it a rotary compressor? Maybe you're looking at saying, hey, is this an orifice tube system or is this a TXV system? You're looking at the lines, trying to decide, okay, what type of pressure control devices are there? Is there a pressure transducer? Is there a high pressure cutoff switch? Is there a low pressure cutoff switch? Are the fans even coming on and off? That's part of determining related symptoms. So maybe you back up one step as you're going through diagnosis. They all kind of, when we're doing them out in the field, we don't just think to ourselves, step one, step two, step three. We're doing them all kind of simultaneously at one time. But as you're, again, teaching somebody this is, what you're wanting to do. Analyzing the system gets really important when you get involved with electrical. Air conditioning electrical, or any electrical at all. Because when you start looking at air conditioning systems, you only have two main systems, an orifice tube system or a TXV system. But you could wire those systems up, dozens, if not hundreds of different ways. And so trying to memorize all the electrical schematics of every vehicle out there is just impossible. And so when you start looking at something as simple as a clutch not coming on, what I'm going to do to analyze the system, that AC system, on how that clutch comes off and on, is I'm going to go to come over here to my page, sorry. Come over to the wiring schematic. And so probably the first thing we'll do is that, especially if it's an electrical problem, if I think that the refrigerant is low charge, I am not gonna look at a wiring schematic for that. That's probably wasting my time, along with maybe hooking up a scan tool. I'm not gonna hook up a scan tool if I think there is low refrigerant in the system. But if I think it's an electrical system, I'm gonna look at the schematic. And by looking at, like, let's say for this example here, I know right away that this clutch in fact, it actually has a clutch. That's kind of important. That's part of visual inspection, but it has a relay. The relay is controlled by the ECM. That's kind of important. So if I want to go into a controller, I want to go into the engine control module, not the body control module. Looks like the switch is hardwired and there's 12 volts going through the switch, going through a high pressure cutoff switch and a low pressure cutoff. I didn't know those low pressure and high pressure cutoff switches were there. So I need to find them. If I didn't see them when I did my determine related symptoms under the hood, now I'm going to look for them and try to look for those switches, because that's an easy place to go and to diagnose. There is an HVAC programmer somewhere here. don't quite know how that operates. I may have to read up on him a little bit to see if he's involved. So the key is that this gives you a really quick glance of what I need to go to check. I could go to the relay and I could pop out the relay and I could check the circuit here. I could look up a scan tool and I could go into the ECM and see if I can control that relay on. Maybe I could look at this AC compressor clutch request input. I can maybe jumper a high pressure cutoff switch or a low pressure cutoff switch or check voltage there to see if they're operating. I probably could do that with my scan tool here. So maybe I don't need to check this circuit if I could get into my scan tool right away. So the key is that when we are teaching what I'm going to call advanced diagnosis, and I again taught Chrysler technicians, for 14 years, over 1,000 technicians. Very rarely did we get out the diagnostic book and teach the technician, okay, let's follow step 1, and let's follow step 2, and let's follow step 3, and let's follow step 4. Now, we did that on occasion if we had to, but we're teaching advanced diagnosis, meaning that you understand how the system works, you understand, let's say, air conditioning, if that's our example, and you can use your resources to figure out how the system operates, how it's configured, how does it work? So I understand that now. I understand this clutch circuit. And now I'm going to go in there and use, the most powerful computer known to man, this thing up here, the best diagnosis tool ever. Well, maybe yours is better than mine. And we're going to go through a thought process of figuring out what's going on. And so maybe some guys will start over here first with the relay. Some people may go down straight to the clutch and check that if it's easy to get to. If it's not easy to get to, I'm not going there. If that's on the top of the engine, I may go to my AC connector right there. If it's on the bottom of the engine, I'm not going to go there right away. I may go to the relay. Maybe I'll check this fuse the first thing I do if it's easy to get to. If all these things are hard to get to, I can't find the relay, I can't find the fuse, the compressor is buried under the engine, I can't get to it, well, then I'm going to hook up a scan tool and I'm going to maybe see if I can go in here and try to control it. That's if the scan tool is available. Maybe somebody else is using the scan tool. So it's like, maybe I'll back up and I'll try to find this fuse one more time. So the key is that, when we start going through diagnosis, I tend to say I don't ever diagnose the same car twice. I'm always going to do something different. It just depends on how easy something is to get to, how it's configured. You're using, again, logic. You're using decision making. You're using problem solving. It's all involved in what we call diagnosis when we're trying to determine what's going on. So let's say, for example, I don't know, I'm just looking at this circuit right here. So let's say that I come over here and I check this wire right here at my AC compressor clutch, and I got the relay jumpered, and there's 12 volts there, but the AC does not come on. Okay, so it does not come on. So it's like, okay, cool. I know what the problem is. It's a bad compressor. It's a bad clutch. So of course you pull the compressor out and you put a new compressor on that comes with the clutch, and you have to pull the refrigerant out. You have to put the refrigerant back in. This is a pretty long process. It could take hours in order to go through this repair. When you turn the system back on again and it still doesn't operate, you're like, what? So you come back over here and you check right here and you got 12 volts there and it still doesn't operate. Well, and I'm kind of using this as one example. And the key is that you have to be careful that the next step, once you analyze the system, you start doing your testing, getting out your voltmeter, getting out your jumper your jumper wire, getting out a test light, whatever tool you're using, an ohm meter, whatever, a scan tool, that's your test equipment. Whatever you're doing, you need to make sure that that the next step is isolating the system down to exactly what the failure is. If I thought that the clutch was bad, okay, I'm always going to ask what's wrong with it, especially if it's an electrical problem. Is it open? Is it shorted? High resistance? Is it low resistance? So here you thought that clutch was bad. Well, verify it. Go and do the next step. Grab an ohm meter and ohm it out and say, oh yeah, it is OL. It doesn't have the proper resistance on it. That will save you a lot of headache. I can't believe how many times somebody will have, oh, I don't know, let's say a map sensor fault code. And so they'll go to a hardware store, an auto parts store. Those are the only two stores I ever go to. And, and they'll ask for a map sensor. And again, they're just guessing. It probably is the map sensor that's wrong, but it could also be the wiring. It could be the connector. It could be the computer's having a problem. It could be that there's maybe a vacuum hose that is cracked, that the map sensor is not getting the right reading right. It could be a vacuum leak, and so that's why the map sensor fault code is setting. So the key is that just because I have a fault code, the fault code is isolating it down to one particular circuit. So the scan tool, even if the map sensor reading was bad, you're looking at your map sensor voltage and it's showing you, 4 volts at idle. It shouldn't show for 4 volts at idle. And so the key is that it helped isolate you down to that circuit, but you still have to do all your testing in order to determine what exactly is bad. Is it the sensors that bad? Is it the wiring that's bad? Is it the connector that's bad? Is it something with the computer that's causing a problem? And so when you guys are diagnosing things in the shop, anytime you tell me there's a problem, I always want to know, well, what's the problem? I mean, why is this bad? You have it in your hand, you have it still in the car, you think it's what's wrong with it. Go and do that extra step and isolate it down and make sure that you have diagnosed properly and you have confirmed that you have found the failure besides just guessing. And when you look at dealerships, technicians do a lot of guessing. They kind of isolate it down. They'll see that fault code. They'll see that bad reading on the scanner, and right away they'll jump into, well, that part's bad, and they'll just replace it. Well, they've been doing this for 20 years, and 9 out of 10 times that sensor is the fault, and if you replace it, it fixes it. And so they tend to go off of experience. And so, when I was working for Chrysler, they would never come to me and say, hey, that map sensor, I put it on and it fixed it. The stuff that was easy, they never talked about. What they would talk about is, hey, I had that map sensor fault code. I put the map sensor on and it didn't fix it. Now what do I do? And so I'm like, well, did you check the voltage values? Did you check the wiring? So they never went through the other process of trying to isolate it down. They were taking shortcuts, trying to beat flat rate and trying to do it as fast as they can without trying to make sure that they've isolated it down correctly. And so that's probably a big area that with technicians in flat rate, flat rate is not very inducive to spending lots of times with diagnosis, but it's important. Okay. We're going to stop right here and we're going to continue on a little bit.